honor to sit down on my 33rd birthday with the 33rd coach of LSU Football,
Nice.
Brian Kelly. Coach, welcome to Baton Rouge.
It's great to be here. It's been a whirlwind, but certainly one that we're excited about.
Technically, I think if you include interims, you're the 34th, but I just had to work in the.
That's all right. I like the birthday. That's good. We got it.
Thank you. So I want to go back in time with you a little bit. Talk about your roots. You're going to spend a lot of time over the next couple of days. We're talking right now before your very first press conference as LSU's football coach, and you're going to talk a lot about the work that's ahead right now and the work to do now. But I want to go back to the past and who you are and where you come from. So tell me about your hometown and growing up in Massachusetts, how that shaped you and the values that it instilled with you that you still carry today.
Yeah, growing up as an Irish Catholic in Boston, Massachusetts, in a blue-collar neighborhood, ethnically diverse. My dad was, worked for a local oil company, was also involved in politics. We were part of the neighborhood. And so, a lot of the important, family values, hard work, discipline, respecting others, all those intrinsic values were important to us growing up in our family. And so, ultimately you carry those with you.
Yeah.
And so that upbringing in Chelsea, Massachusetts, in a large degree formed who I am today.
Big Red Sox fan?
I am a Red Sox fan. I do follow all the Boston teams.
Sure.
Look, my biggest passion will be, the Tigers.
Of course.
But, when you get a little time off, I don't mind following the professional teams. And my kids have kind of followed them with me along the way, so it's been kind of fun.
I don't know if you've met our starting center yet, Liam Shanahan, but he's from up that area and was actually a groundskeeper for the Red Sox for a while. So I'm sure y'all could
we'll have
great
some
stories.
We'll converse on some interesting days.
So for somebody that grew up in Boston, it's interesting that your breakthrough in college coaching was with the Lakers in Michigan. Tell me about Grand Valley and how you got there, first of all,
right.
and sort of the door that opened for coaching. Because I know you went to Assumption as well.
I did.
A great kicker that went to Assumption, Cole Tracy. Talked to him yesterday. He was excited.
Pretty good player.
Yeah.
Came out of little old Assumption College. It was a Division III program when I started. It's now a scholarship Division II program. I'm really proud of the success that they've had. It was really a pathway for me to get back in. I started actually when I graduated from Assumption in politics. Worked for a state senator from Boston, worked in the State House, and I think we got around 2:30, 3 o'clock around practice time, kept looking out the window going, I don't know if I'm in the right business here. And I did. I missed it, and it lured me back into being a graduate assistant. And my only pathway to being a graduate assistant was to be the women's softball coach. Rita Castagna, who was the women's athletic director at the time, was kind of thinking about hanging it up as the softball coach. Said, listen, I think I got a way for you to get in, but you're going to have to coach women's softball. Gladly took on the responsibility and enjoyed it. And that was really the start of my career, was through women's softball. That gave me the opportunity to coach football that next fall. Left Assumption to Grand Valley State as a graduate assistant, coached the defensive backs, and moved on to being the defensive coordinator. And then as Lou Holtz has spun many stories, he hired the head coach at Grand Valley at the time, who I worked for, Tom Beck. Mm-hmm. And he tells the story that he started me off in this profession. He didn't know who I was, but when he hired Tom Beck, I ascended to the head coaching position. So that's the short story of how I got to Grand Valley and how I became the head coach at 29 years old.
Yeah, it's a small world. And you mentioned coaching softball, and I was fortunate enough to be there this morning when you met Beth Torina, our softball coach here. And you spoke to the coaches this morning, and you talked about how they're your peers and that you're here to learn from them too.
Yeah, no doubt.
That always fascinates me about coaches is that, you getting your start in softball, I imagine the lessons that you learned coaching those teams are still lessons that you use with your teams today. How much of that is carried over?
Yeah, I think, the women that I got a chance to coach, they weren't thinking about, the professional, step, right? They were playing because they love to play. And so their commitment, their drive, their want and desire to be better, their commitment to their teammate, really is another foundational block that I carry with me today in the development of our program. So there's always things that you're picking up along the way. And many times people say, hey, who was that one mentor? Like, what coach did you really, kind of design things after. And it wasn't one coach. It was real life experiences along the way that helped develop and formulate, who I am today.
Yeah, we're a collection of all the people we meet, and that's
no doubt.
That's how we become who we are. So you get to Grand Valley, and you're the head coach there. And, we talk a lot around here at LSU about roots and being deeply rooted. And I know that's where a lot of your roots are, right? That's where you met your wife.
Yep.
That's where you started a family, and that's where you started your coaching career. What was that time like? I mean, how old were you at the time? As
I was 29. I was
29
as the head coach and didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
I was messing it up along the way and trying to figure it out. And again, trying to listen to others. Had mentors that were other coaches that I leaned at. Jerry Baltus, who's still the head track coach there, who's won a number of national championships, was a great colleague of mine there, and kind of what we talked about today.
Sure.
We would pick each other's brain and talk to each other about things, and so was able to really learn the profession. That's where you learn how to do the laundry, the small jobs, and literally had to, preparing bus trips. So that experience at Grand Valley showed me the operational piece of putting together a football program, and it served me well.
I'm going to steer off the path of football for a second.
Sure.
How'd you meet your wife?
Well, I mean, it just depends which story you want to go with.
The best one.
She worked in financial aid. I was the head coach. I thought that'd be a pretty good person to meet.
For sure.
And the real story is, we would have our recruiting weekends, and she gave the presentations through financial aid. And I thought she was pretty good. Mm-hmm. And she was extremely bright and talented, and we just hit it off and started our family there, lived in the apartments there. Our kids grew up in the apartments, and now we've got two boys that are there. One's involved in football, the coaching end, and one's involved in playing. So it's really been a neat story.
So obviously your wife has an incredible story too, and a two-time cancer survivor. And so you hear that and you think toughness, right?
Yeah.
And toughness is on my mind today because I was at the ER last night with my 4-year-old who took a concrete when she fell down on the concrete, busted her face up and had to get stitches. And so I was sitting there last night preparing for this interview, taking care of my daughter, and just thinking about toughness. Yeah. So I wanted to ask you, what does toughness mean to you, and what you've seen in football, but also what you've seen from your wife and in your personal life?
Yeah. So toughness to me is really about building trust, building accountability. It's not this sense of I can grind through anything. Mm-hmm. It's the mental over the physical. Mm-hmm. And so when you have toughness, you have, I think more than anything else, the ability to be in a position where you have everybody's trust and you're accountable to any situation. And my wife, when we talk about toughness, she owned everything in her own life, and she asked for nothing. And cancer was her way of strengthening her own mind, and so that was toughness. And for me, that's why it's been part of the foundational success of the programs. We build mental toughness with our football teams, and we don't do it because we run harder or run longer. That's not mental toughness. Mental toughness is accountability, trust, owning your decisions, and that to me is what that displays.
That's well said. And you mentioned that's being the foundation of the program, and I know you have a foundation as well that is near and dear to your heart. Could you just speak to that a little bit and your plans for it here? I know it's very early days.
Sure.
You've got a lot of balls in the air that you're juggling, but I know that's an important piece.
It's called the Kelly Cares Foundation. It's a playbook for success, and the pillars are really simple. First of all, health, right, and in particular cancer and breast cancer. We've also feel like the other component is education. We've been involved in many universities, and we believe in the foundations of education and community. So those pillars have been part of our foundation. We've been fortunate to give back over $5 million through our foundation, and a lot of that has been through people that have touched Pocky in our lives and have seen that we're really about being first responders. And I don't mean your brave first responders, but I mean, when you need something right away, we've been able to turn that around through this foundation and assist immediately through one of those 3 pillars.
Yeah, and those 3 pillars, what stands out to me as you talk about them is they apply anywhere. I mean, you can go anywhere, and those are constants. And so one of the, and we'll kind of pivot back to football and where you are now, one of the interesting conversations has been about culture, right? Yeah. And you come from, before I ask you the next question, what's the hottest Christmas you've ever had? I mean, you spent most of your Christmases, I would think, a little bit north of here.
Yeah, I think it would have to only be when we were at a bowl site. You know, it's certainly not been in South Bend. It's certainly not been in. Listen, I was in Cincinnati when it was snowing.
Yeah.
And listen, snow in Cincinnati is not a good thing.
So I've heard.
People panic.
Yeah.
You
should see it in Baton Rouge.
Yeah, no doubt.
It doesn't happen often, but
I'll bet. You know, obviously I was in Mount Pleasant, and that's not very warm either.
Yeah.
So my stops have been, cold weather. So it's definitely had to have been a bowl site where it's my warmest.
For sure. Well, it brings me to the point that, there's talk about culture, and one of the narratives you'll hear is, well, is Brian Kelly going to fit the culture of LSU? And to me, there's almost 2 parts to it, right? It's one, that the things that the values that you just espoused, I mean, those apply anywhere. It doesn't matter where you are. Yeah. And the other thing too is that, I would imagine, and I don't want to speak for you, and so I'll ask you, that when you came here, you weren't coming here to fit into the culture. You wanted to transform the culture of this program while still espousing all the things that are great about South Louisiana. So I'll kind of didn't really ask a question, but I'll just hand it off to you there.
Yeah, no. So the culture of the community, the culture of the state, we want to immerse ourselves in it. We want to be part of it. We want the culture to change us from that perspective. We're not here to change the culture of Louisiana. We want to be part of it.
Yep.
As it relates to our football program, our culture will have the standards of what we expect our student athletes to achieve on a day-to-day basis, what we expect our staff and all those associated with our culture. So there are 2 different cultures. We can't wait to immerse ourselves into Louisiana culture and soak it up and be part of it and change in a positive way because of it. But within our football program culture, there'll be standards, and those standards will be met too, and you'll be held accountable to.
When you change positions, when you leave a school, and you've done it with Grand Valley State, Central Michigan, Cincinnati,
this will be number 5.
You've done it before, and I know it's not easy.
Not easy.
When you get the call from LSU and Scott Warwood's on the other end of the line, and you've got a decision to make, as difficult as it is, what was the selling point on this place and coming here now?
Well, I don't know that there was a need for sell. People sell me. Places don't sell me. People do. So it starts there. So the alignment needed to be with, I would say, the athletic director, the president, the board, the fan base, all of those things needed to be in alignment. And so I wanted to be at a place that had that alignment. That was clear. That didn't require a long conversation. And then there needed to be alignment from the Kelly family. That's the other side. I'm not here unless my wife wants to be here and be part of it, and my family wants to be part of it. This is not a single operation. I don't get through this without my entire family and my wife. So once we had the feeling that this operation was totally aligned and working in one direction, and that didn't take very long. That took 45 minutes of a phone conversation with Scott. It then just became, is the Kelly family aligned?
Yep.
And when those 2 came together, pretty easy.
And now the next job for you is to take that alignment and apply it in the team and in the locker room. And I know you met with the team yesterday and you had a message for them. It was interesting. I was listening to a conversation you had with somebody on a podcast. You talked about traits over talent in that podcast. Yeah. And that stood out to me because there's no doubt that there's a lot of talent in that locker room that you talked to yesterday, and you're going to recruit a lot of talent. But I wanted to know about the traits and the traits that you look for and the traits that this program is going to be built on.
Yeah, so traits are universal. I want them to leave here and be able to take those traits into an NFL locker room, into any job setting. I want them to be better husbands, better fathers by just being part of our culture and our standards. And so we know that we're going to have talent. Talent alone doesn't win national championships, but building those traits, what I call traits of excellence, and we've defined them as, having a great attitude, being smart in terms of making good choices and things that they have in front of them. They've got to have an attention to detail. Certainly, at the end of the day, a laser focus on what's important for them now in their life. And they've got to have some grit. They've got to have some passion and perseverance. And if you take those traits with total preparation, which is the physical, the technical, the tactical, and the mental, and you have the right mindset, that's our process, and that's what we'll work on every single day.
Well, I know you demand those traits, Coach, but you embody them as well. That's why we're excited to have you.
Appreciate
I know you have a lot to do, so I'm going to let you go now, but I appreciate your time.
Appreciate it. Good spending time with you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.